All right, so hey, what's up, everybody? We are talking today about how to get your dream job. So, there are a few things that I've done in my life to get my dream jobs. Some include like writing letters, applying over and over, talking and finding the person who's in charge, et cetera, et cetera. So, we're going to be going through a lot of the things that I've done to get my dream job. Some of the dream jobs that I've had are jobs like farming in Maui, okay? Working at a high-level recording studio in Times Square in the Brill Building. If you don't know what the Brill Building is, it was an iconic recording industry building that housed multiple studios throughout decades of popular music in America. Other cool jobs working for a record label and a record distribution company, doing marketing. Other cool jobs, a lot of them. So, for example, when I was living in Las Vegas, I was playing piano on the Las Vegas Strip, and I had a friend of mine reach out to me, and he said, do you want to move to New York? He was moving to New York for the first time, and he was looking for a roommate, and he knew that I was kind of looking for some other stuff to do besides what I was doing in Vegas. And so he was like, why don't you come to New York? We'll get our place together, and then you go do your thing, I'll go do my thing. And so he's a pro photographer. He at the time was doing like fashion photography, and I was not sure what I wanted to do, but I knew that if I went to New York that I was going to pursue working in a recording studio, which was one of the things that I really had wanted to do since I was like 8 years old. And so, not really knowing much, I did go to college for audio engineering, and then I also studied what they called entertainment business, which was what my bachelor's degree was in, which was basically just some classes on different pieces of the entertainment industry, specifically having to do with like intellectual property and promotion management, legal stuff, accounting, finance, et cetera, et cetera. But when I got out of school, I had a really difficult time while I was in school because I did a lot of drugs, and I drank a lot, and I really kind of messed up my brain and my body for a little while. And I was dealing with some heavy, very, very heavy anxiety, and which is how I got into like weight loss and all that stuff, which we're not going to talk about right now. But anyways, so I got out of school, and I didn't end up going for my dream job at that time because I was nervous. I was just a little bit like, I was young, I was naive, I was anxious, I was burned out, and I did too many drugs. And so I messed up my opportunity to really take advantage of the track that I was on in a professional way, and I didn't go. I didn't go for it. And so I ended up moving back to a comfortable place, which was North Carolina, which is where I grew up. And I just got a job working at this piano store because I was a piano player, and I wanted to learn how to fix pianos. I wanted to learn basically how to take apart a piano, every piece, and put it all back together. And so I pursued going after learning that. And I was working at this piano store selling pianos for Yamaha, mainly for Yamaha, and did well, and that was really cool, but it wasn't my dream job. Well, years later, how many years later? 3 or 4 years later, after doing many, many other jobs, one of the things that I had done was when I went to college, I did have a few instructors that said, hey, if you ever like are going for something, or you ever going to this city or that city, you're going to New York, you're going to LA, or going to Nashville, or going to Miami, or whatever, and you want to try and get in touch with people, let me know. Which was cool because I did. That's another little, like, I did do well in school, right? So I it was okay for me to, like, even though I was like freaking drugging it up, I did do pretty well, and I made an impact and I made an impression on my instructors and my the people who I was around, which was cool because I think that that's one of the things that helps get a dream job is when you do good work, and you pay attention, and are high quality, like you love what you do, and so you pour yourself into it, and people notice that, and it's attractive. And so that's what I did in school. I probably could have done a lot better if I wasn't on so many drugs, but who's to say, really? And so I oh my gosh. All right. So I'm in Vegas, and actually it was my college roommate who reached out to me and said he was moving to New York. He's one of my best friends. He was the best man at my wedding, and just like a solid dude. Now he's like crazy successful photographer. So anyways, we moved to New York, but before we did, all right, he had probably given me like 30 days notice. I don't know, not very much advance, like a few weeks. He was like, "Hey, I'm moving to New York. I'm looking for somebody to go with me. Maybe you can come. We can get a room together, blah, blah, blah." That ended up blowing up actually in my face too. He's still one of my really good friends, but the situation. Anyway, so I go, and I remember my lab instructors. And I'm like, "Hey, does anybody know anybody working at like this place or that place?" And I remember that I knew someone who knew one of the studio managers who used to manage Quad Studios, which was where like the main like hip hop 90s popular hip hop was happening. And I was really interested in the history of Quad and in the history of just everything that had gone on there and blah blah blah. And so I knew somebody that had something to do with somebody else who had done stuff at Quad. And so I started reaching out to a few lab instructors. I reached out to one, and they were like, "Yeah, I know this guy, but like he doesn't work at Quad anymore. He's actually at KMA. KMA Music was a recording studio in the Brill building in Times Square, mixed. It was mainly, I mean, they did do tracking there, but it was a lot of a mixing studio. There was this one engineer, Ken Duro, who would mix a lot of the like really popular music at the time: Beyonce, Jay-Z, Justin Bieber, Lil Wayne, blah blah blah. Like this was like this is like maybe 10 or 11, 2010 or 2011, something like that. So like Bieber 2.0 and American Gangster. There was a few of those like albums that at the time were, heavy hitters and were being worked on in this studio. And so I was like, "Oh, whoa, okay." And so, but they didn't give me like a contact. They gave me a name, but not the person's email, not the person's contact, nothing. They just said, "This person is kind of like high up in the recording world," and that's pretty much all they said. And so I went about, I think this was like before LinkedIn. I don't know when LinkedIn came out. I'll have to look it up, but whatever. LinkedIn was not a big platform if it was available. And there was Facebook and Instagram, obviously. And so I looked up basically on Google, KMA Music. I looked up like how to get in touch with them, how to rent studio time, how to get in touch with their house engineers, how to get in touch with anybody who worked there. And finally, there was like this info at KMA email that I found, and I just started writing them letters every day. And this was while I was still in Vegas, after my buddy had invited me to New York. I didn't know if they were going to accept me. I had never really done studio engineering except for in college. I never really went and worked in a studio after college. I still had the knowledge and I still had some practice, but I would have been probably starting like at an intern level. But I still wanted to do it because I was in my early 20s and I wanted the experience of being able to work in a popular music commercial studio. And so I'm writing them letters. I don't know if I have the letters anymore. I'll have to look and see if I have them. But basically was just saying, I would like to come work for you. I'll start at the bottom. I'll sweep the floors. I'll dust. I'll do whatever I need to do to get my foot in the door. And then after that, I started talking about like my passion and why I wanted to do this. Why do I want to work at this studio? Because I know this person who told me that you're the guy to work for, and that you have the experience and you have the knowledge and you can help me get with engineers and you can help me meet producers and, like all of these different things. And why do I want to do that? Well, because, I believe that I was born to be in the entertainment industry, just because maybe that's something that was put into my psyche. That's something I'm still trying to wrestle with at this moment. But it's just been something that's been ingrained in me, and that I kind of grew up knowing that I was going to have some sort of part in the entertainment industry, which has been most of my career. And so no reply. 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 And then it was time to go. Then it was time to move to damn. Yeah, it was time to move to New York. And so I moved to New York. My buddy was staying in Jersey, actually. So we were staying in Jersey at some dude's freaking attic apartment. It was terrible. And then we were both getting tired of riding the train in and all this stuff and like the commute and all this stuff. And he was like, why don't we look for a place like in Brooklyn or in the city? And so we started looking, found a place. I had borrowed like $6,000 actually to put down the deposit, first and last month's rent, basically for $2,000 a month to rent a room the size of my kitchen, basically now. And we just slept on the floor. We had like some like mats and sleeping bags, and I had a little keyboard, and we had beer, and we had a rooftop, and we had a view, and it was dope. But I didn't have a job. I didn't have a job. I did not have a job. So the first day that we moved, we got settled in to Brooklyn, Knickerbocker Avenue in Bushwick. And the building was 54 Knickerbocker Avenue. And I think we are on like the fourth or fifth, maybe a little more. It was a lot of stairs. I remember that shit. So anyway, we move. I get there to we get our stuff in, blah blah blah. The next day, he's working at these like film rental houses and working with these different producers, and like he's like in the film scene already. He's like taking photos. He's freaking in the thing, doing the thing. He's going to all these fashion photo shoots and parties, and I'm just in this apartment, just like, oh, what the hell? I'm wasting my life, right? And so I finally just go to the Brill Building, and I show up at like probably 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. There's security everywhere. There's security at the front door. There's security at the elevator. There's security, I'm pretty sure, at the top of the elevator, like on each floor. I don't know. There's definitely security at the bottom of the elevator. There's definitely security at the door. And I go in and I told them I'm here to interview for a job at KMA, which I was there to interview for a job at KMA, but nobody else knew about the interview except for me. And so I go in, and the dude lets me up the elevator. I go up the elevator. There's nobody on the floor. I go in, and if you've ever seen the movie Jersey Boys, all right, that is the Brill Building, where they go up and they're like poking their heads into different studios, trying to meet different labels, and everybody's like, "Get out of here! What are you doing here? Get out of here!" It's like that. So like I go in, and it was totally quiet at the time I was there, but you could see all the different doors of where all the studios used to be and stuff like that, which was pretty incredible. If you're into media and music and the recording industry and entertainment industry, the Brill Building is definitely a place to go check out if you're in New York. And so I go, and I finally find KMA. I find the studio. I go up, and these kinds of places are not easy to find. You know, like unless you're like, or somebody has shown you where they are, which was neither of the case. These places are not very easy to find. And so I go in, the door's locked, no one's there, and so I just sit outside the studio, and I don't know if there was a chair. I think there might have either been a chair, or maybe I just sat on the floor against the wall. And this dude comes walking in like a few hours later. It might have been like 10 o'clock in the morning. And he says, "Hey, can I help you? What's going on?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have an interview with the studio manager." And he says, "Well, that's funny because I'm the studio manager." And I go, "Oh, well, I'm here to see so-and-so," which was not who this was. And he said, "Oh," he said, "he's not the manager. He's an owner." And I was like, "Oh, got it. Okay. So when do I get to see him?" And he said, "Well, this is the music business, and nobody's going to show up here until like 2 p.m. And I was like, "Oh, damn." And so he goes, "Why don't you go out and get some food?" And he asked me about what I was doing, and I was like, I'm trying to meet this dude. I've been trying to talk to him forever, blah blah blah, and I'd really like to come work here, and I have what it takes to work here, and I'd like to be able to show you that. And so, dude, so he says, "Why don't you go get something to eat and come back around like 2 o'clock, because that's when he'll be showing up." And I was like, "Okay." So I go out, and at that point, I was a little afraid that he wasn't going to let me back in, like, "Don't let the door hit you in the butt on the way out" kind of thing. But I still was like pretty trusting, and I felt like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. So I just go out, I get some food, walk around Times Square for a little bit, enjoy the sights, enjoy what I'm doing. kind of processing, like, I'm getting ready to meet this dude who has a lot of connections in the industry and who is around a lot of people that I want to be around, et cetera, et cetera. And I could only stay out for like an hour and a half or so. I was like, I just could, I wanted to be back in there, you know? And so I get back there at like 12:30 or 1 maybe. And he's like, all right, man, that's cool, but he's not giving me. So dude ends up not showing up until like 3. I was just sitting there in his chair. And then after he shows up, he basically just like walks by me, goes into his office, and basically just like, I just sat there for hours, like hours, 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 hours. And then finally, like early evening, late afternoon, the guy that I met in the morning comes back and he says, okay, he's ready to like see you. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I go back and I meet him. I sit down in the chair. Excuse me. And when I meet him, he's basically just like, so what's going on? I'm like, dude, I just want to work here. Like, I want to be around. I want to be in the industry, and I know this is the place to be, and I know that there's a lot of great engineers here, and I know there's a lot of good like stuff getting mixed here, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to do this at a high level. And this is the highest, this is the place that's like one of the highest levels that I know of in the world. And I'm sitting in the chair talking to the guy. So that's what I'm doing here. And what do I need to do to make that happen? And he's like, are you the guy that's been writing us all those emails? I will never forget that. I will never forget. He's like, are you the guy? Are you the guy that's been writing us those emails? I'm like, yeah, man. And he was like, he goes, okay. And he basically just said, when can you start? And I said, right now. And he said, okay, done. Like, don't screw it up. Don't mess around. And James, the other guy, he'll show you what to do. He'll tell you what to do. Just whatever he says, do it. And I said, okay. And I got the job. So now in that job, what's even crazier is that I feel like I gave my power away early on in my life. And I feel like a lot of us do. And then we have to like spend time as adults, like trying to understand who we are and like basically gaining our power back from like giving it away as children. Because you kind of have to when you're a child. Like, you know, you have to get along in an adult's world as a child, and you lose a lot of yourself. And I think that spending time finding that again is a lot of what makes life gratifying and fulfilling as an adult. So I think that I didn't need that experience as much as I originally thought I did, especially now with how things are in the entertainment industry and how there's so much distribution and like it's just if you want to create or be in the media industry, all you have to do is basically push a button nowadays. And so, you know, I wanted to be in the industry, but I think that's because I didn't know what I already had, and I didn't value what I already had, and I didn't pursue what I already had because I didn't value it. And so it's taken me this whole lifetime to basically come back to a place where I feel like I am so much more valuable than I thought I was, and the intellectual property that I have, the ideas that I have, the innovation that I have, the thoughts that I have about education and media and the future, and just living a creative, fulfilling life and existence, um, have changed so much and blossomed so much since trying to look for things outside of myself to to be to give me my happiness or my fulfillment. And so go for your dream job with a grain of salt, as far as like, I would, before I went for my dream job, what I would do is I would find myself, and I would check in with myself and ask myself, what brings me joy? What brings me peace? What is the most fulfilling? What are the most fulfilling activities for me? And sometimes it takes me a long time to find those, because sometimes I don't even know what they all are. For instance, I really love building things, like hammer, nails, screws, saws, all that stuff. But I don't do very much of it because my life has taken me on a different path than that. But every time I do that stuff, I feel incredibly fulfilled. That doesn't mean I need to go do it for a job, but it does mean to process what are those things that bring you joy. Because I thought that working in a commercial studio, from the outsider's perspective, was my dream job. That's what I wanted to do for my whole life. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm in the industry, I'm here. And then once I got there, it was not at all what I was made for, or built for, or prepared for. And I decided that I didn't want to be, I it wasn't even a decision really. It was more of just a realization that I don't like taking orders. It's not that I can't, and it's not that I won't do it. I won't do a good job when I do take orders. It's more just like, I want to create. I want to throw paint on the wall. I want to make the song. Like, I'm down to help other people make the songs, but I like I believe in myself. And that believing finally got me to the point where I was ready to start putting out my own media and all that stuff. So, anyway, that's one of the stories about going for one of my dream jobs. I will have multiple stories about dream jobs, and because I've tried a lot, and I've dreamed a lot, and I've gone to do a lot of different jobs that have been really fun, and also helped me come to the realization that wasn't the job that I was going to do forever, but I was glad for the experience. So, anyway, hope this helps you find your dream job.